When a 17-year-old McDonald's worker paid for Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's meal out of respect, he didn't expect to be fired, or for what came next to turn his life completely upside down. Dallas heat doesn't play fair in July. Even at 8:30 in the evening, the air outside the McDonald's on Buckner Boulevard stuck to the skin like glue. Inside, the fryers hissed, the soda machine wheezed, and 17-year-old Keon Whitlow wiped the sweat off his brow with the back of his glove. He was 3 hours into his shift, barely halfway done, and starving. He'd clocked in late again. Not because he didn't care, but because he had to walk. His mom's old Dodge broke down weeks ago, and Lyft wasn't an option when there were 4 people splitting one paycheck. He wasn't complaining. Keon wasn't that type. He worked hard, kept his head down, and tried not to give the manager, Mrs. Tran, any more reasons to remind him he was replaceable. But that night, something unusual happened. Around 8:45, a black SUV rolled into the lot. Not the flashy kind with spinning rims, just clean government plates, no music playing. Out stepped a woman Keon had seen on TV, but never imagined would show up at his McDonald's, Jasmine Crockett. No security, no handlers. Just her, in a blue pantsuit and sneakers, standing in line like anybody else. Keon looked at the cashier, then back at her. "That's the Congresswoman," he whispered under his breath. "From South Dallas. That's her." Crockett smiled at the guy in front of her, waiting patiently. When it was her turn, Keon found himself inching closer. He wasn't on register duty, but the lobby was slow, so he leaned in just as the cashier asked for her order. "Just a McChicken and a small sweet tea," she said. "Long day." Keon chuckled, more out of nerves than humor. "Ain't nothing like a McChicken to wrap up government business." She turned. "You say that like you know," she grinned. "I mean, you do good work. We watch your clips at the house sometimes." He scratched his cheek, realizing how weird that probably sounded. "My grandma calls you that firecracker lady in the blue suit." That got a real laugh out of her. "Tell your grandma I appreciate the nickname." She was cool, down to earth, didn't act too important. So Keon, on a tired gut instinct, nodded to the cashier and said, "It's on me." Crockett raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" "Yeah," he said, already pulling a few crumpled singles out of his apron. "It's like $4, just a thank you." She looked him in the eye for a second too long. "That's kind of you." "It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing. The shift ended without any fanfare. He mopped the floor, reloaded napkins, clocked out, and was tying his hoodie around his waist when Mrs. Tran called him into the office. "You gave away food?" Her tone wasn't angry. It was cold, corporate cold. He shrugged. "It was just a McChicken and tea. I paid for it." "You paid for it after ringing it up under her name?" Keon blinked. "No, she ordered. I said I'd cover it, and I gave the money right after." She tapped on her tablet screen. "Doesn't matter. That's theft under company policy. No free food, not to family, not to politicians." "I didn't know it was a problem if I paid." "It's not about the money. It's about process and appearance." Keon stood silent. He wasn't about to argue. The office walls felt tight. He'd been on thin ice for showing up late last week. Maybe this was just the last straw. "You're done here," she said. "Effective immediately. No write-up, no warning, just gone." He walked out the back door with his hands in his hoodie pockets. The parking lot buzzed with leftover heat and drive-through orders. He thought about calling his mom, but didn't want to hear the tiredness in her voice. He'd just walk home. Try to figure it out tomorrow. What hurt wasn't losing the job. It was losing it over kindness. A split-second decision. One that felt right. But he had no idea that someone else had seen what happened, and that it was already making its way through Dallas Twitter. By morning, Keon's name wasn't trending, but the story was already crawling through local feeds. A blurry cell phone photo taken from across the dining room showed Jasmine Crockett at the counter, Keon nearby, his head slightly bowed. Someone captioned it. "Kid gave her a free meal and got fired. What kind of nonsense is that?" It started small, a couple of retweets, a thread or two, but Dallas had eyes and people talk, especially when something feels unfair. Meanwhile, Keon sat on the couch at home, scrolling in silence while his little brother played Xbox, and his mom shuffled papers in the next room. She was trying to sort the rent situation, again. He hadn't told her yet. Not because he was hiding, he just didn't know how to explain getting fired for something that wasn't really wrong. His phone buzzed, a message from a girl he barely knew from school. "Yo, is this about you?" She'd sent the tweet. His stomach dropped. He clicked it. His face wasn't clear in the picture, but people in the comments were already guessing who the employee was. Someone claimed to recognize him from Hillcrest High. Someone else posted, "Manager tripping. He paid for it." He locked the screen. At the restaurant, things were tense. Mrs. Tran was already fielding calls from people asking what happened. One man yelled through the drive-through speaker, "Tell your boss she just made a mistake." But Tran wasn't budging. Inside, she pulled her 2 shift leads into the office. "I followed protocol," she said. "I mean, he's a good kid," one of them said quietly. "Good doesn't cover losses. If we bend for one customer, just one, it sends the wrong message." The other lead, a guy named Vince who'd been there 4 years, looked at her. "Even if it was Congresswoman Crockett?" Tran froze. "It doesn't matter who she is." But it did, because later that same day, Crockett saw the photo. A staffer texted it to her during a committee break in Austin. She stared at it, lips pressed tight. "Wait," she said aloud. "They fired that boy?" Her staffer shrugged. "Looks like it." She didn't say anything for a moment, just scrolled through the thread. People defending the teen, others arguing about company policy, a few trolls stirring things up, as usual. One tweet stuck out. "That's the problem. Rules over people. Hope she says something." That evening, Crockett returned to Dallas earlier than planned. She didn't go home. She didn't call anyone. She pulled into the same McDonald's drive-thru, placed a small order she didn't want, and parked. She stood outside the glass for a minute, watching. Some of the staff noticed. One girl whispered, "She's back. Yo, that's her." Crockett stepped inside. The room got quiet fast. Customers stared. Phones came out. A manager from the back peered over the counter, wide-eyed. Mrs. Tran appeared, adjusting her blouse. She came to the front, trying to smile. "Congresswoman Crockett, it's, nice to see you again." "I wish I could say the same," Crockett replied calmly. "Mind if we talk somewhere private?" They went to the side hallway, just out of earshot, but customers were reading lips, recording anyway. Crockett's voice was low, but firm. "I didn't ask for that meal. That young man gave it out of respect, and you fired him." Tran crossed her arms. "It wasn't personal. It's about store policy." "And what's your policy on basic decency?" "That's not fair." "No," Crockett said. "What happened to that kid wasn't fair." Outside, people could see the tension. No shouting, no drama, just 2 women standing 10 feet apart with the air stretched tight between them. "I'd like his contact information," Crockett said. "If you won't give it, I'll find another way." Tran didn't answer right away. Crockett added, "I don't plan to tweet about this. I don't want to make it a circus. I just want to speak to him." After a beat, Tran muttered something and walked away. Crockett stood for a moment longer, then left. She didn't make a scene, didn't ask for headlines, but the video of her visit, recorded by a teen in the corner booth, had already hit Instagram. But Crockett wasn't interested in going viral. She had something else in mind, and it started with finding Keon. Keon didn't check social media that night. He lay in bed, phone face down on the floor, headphones in but no music playing. His mom had found out. She always did. He expected yelling, disappointment, but all she said was, "We'll figure it out." Then she turned off the kitchen light and left him alone with the silence. By morning, the house smelled like toast and instant coffee. Keon barely touched his plate. That's when the knock came. 3 times. Firm, no rhythm, just enough to sound official. Keon looked through the peephole, then took a half step back. "Ma," he called out, "you might want to come see this." Outside, in jeans and a t-shirt, stood Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. His mom opened the door with 1,000 questions in her eyes, but Crockett got straight to the point. "I'm here to see Keon, if that's all right." He stepped forward, stunned. Yeah, that's me. You mind if we talk for a few minutes?" They sat on the edge of the porch, 2 feet apart. His mom stayed close, arms folded, watching from the screen door. Keon spoke first. "I didn't think you'd even remember me." She smiled. "You think I forget the people who show me respect? You took $4 out of your own pocket for me. You didn't owe me that." "I didn't do it for attention," he said quickly. "I know. That's why I'm here." She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. This is a referral. A good friend of mine runs a youth employment program over on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. They help kids finish high school, find stable jobs, build resumes, real stuff. Keon stared at the paper but didn't take it yet. There's a spot open. You don't have to say yes, but it's there for you. His throat tightened. Why are you doing this? Crockett looked at him. Because kindness matters, and because sometimes the people who do the smallest good are the ones who get hit the hardest. I can't undo what that manager did, but I can make sure it doesn't define your next step. He took the paper. I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything, she said. Just don't let this be where your story ends. His mom came out, eyes wet, and hugged him tight. As Crockett walked to her car, the neighbor across the street started clapping slow and loud. Then someone else joined. Within seconds, it spread across the block. Keon stood on the porch, blinking, half laughing at the surreal moment. But the city hadn't moved on just yet. That same afternoon, a local news van pulled into the McDonald's lot. They hadn't planned to cover the story, but once the Crockett video hit 300,000 views overnight, producers pushed for it. Mrs. Tran kept her composure during the interview. She repeated the policy, said it wasn't personal, said emotions shouldn't override corporate guidelines. But her voice didn't land the way she wanted. The public didn't hear structure. They heard stubbornness. At home, Keon watched the news segment replay his face, blurred but still recognizable, and felt his stomach twist. I didn't ask for all this, he said. No, his mom replied, but sometimes the good you do puts you in a light, and people either celebrate you or try to burn you for it. He stared at the paper Crockett gave him, thumb running over the corner. I think I'm going to go tomorrow. Then you go. But while Keon was finally starting to move forward, the storm outside the restaurant was only growing louder. By the next morning, the local story had gone national. The clip of Jasmine Crockett standing in the McDonald's lobby, cool-headed, measured, ran across morning shows from Phoenix to Philadelphia. On Good Day, Texas, a panel of commentators argued over policy versus principle. One anchor called it an example of grace. Another said, let's be real, it's $4. This shouldn't even be news. But it was, because it hit a nerve. People saw their own stories in Keon's, times they got punished for doing the right thing, for stepping out of line, for showing kindness in a system that didn't know what to do with it. McDonald's corporate stayed quiet at first. In the meantime, Crockett released a short video. No music, no edits, just her on her back porch. I didn't ask for a free meal, but I did receive one, from someone who meant it as a simple act of respect. That young man paid for the food himself, and he was fired for it. Not suspended, not warned, fired. This isn't about rules. It's about what kind of culture we want to uphold. Do we want a world where following the policy is more important than recognizing decency? The video exploded. Comment sections filled with people sharing their own stories. Baristas reprimanded for giving free coffee to homeless folks. Store clerks written up for covering short change. Warehouse workers fired for taking 2 extra minutes on break to help a new hire. Even other McDonald's employees began posting anonymously, screenshots of schedules, stories of harsh discipline for minor mistakes. Some called for a boycott. Others flooded the corporate line with voicemails. Back in Dallas, Keon showed up to the employment program Crockett referred him to. The building was worn but clean, tucked between a grocery outlet and a community health center. Inside, he met Mr. Talbot, the program director. Middle-aged, steady voice, called everyone young man or miss. Talbot shook Keon's hand and said, "So you're the kid who caused all this." Keon started to shrink, but Talbot clapped a hand on his shoulder. "Good. Means you stood for something." They got him signed up for resume workshops, job training, even GED prep, just in case he wanted to finish early and move on to something bigger. That night, Keon sat on the steps of the center and looked at the skyline in the distance. Dallas hadn't changed. The air still stuck to his skin. His life was still hard. But now, it didn't feel small. He took out his phone and scrolled through the newest thread someone had posted. There it was, his name. Full name this time. Someone had found it. Keon Whitlow deserves better. McDonald's corporate, do something right. He tossed the phone in his lap. What do I do now? He mumbled to himself. Make the next move count, said a voice nearby. Crockett had pulled up again, leaning against her car. "You always just pop up like this?" he asked, smirking. "Only when I feel like someone's at a crossroads. I'm not sure what I'm doing." "You don't need to be sure. You just need to stay honest." He looked at her. "You really believe this all happened for a reason?" She didn't answer immediately. "I believe what you did mattered. That's enough." But not everyone saw it that way, and in the boardrooms of McDonald's headquarters, executives were getting ready to make a calculated response. Keon walked through the double glass doors of the employment center every day that week. He wasn't used to structure that didn't feel like punishment. There were no bells, no uniforms, no one watching the clock every second. Just people who asked what you wanted out of life, then quietly tried to help you get there. On Thursday, he sat across from Miss Regina, one of the career coaches. She wore big glasses and had an even bigger laugh. "So," she said, tapping her pen against his intake form, "you put down that you like working with people. Is that still true?" "I guess," Keon shrugged. "I like being part of a team. When it's not toxic, I mean." Regina nodded like she'd heard it 100 times. "You ever think about going into customer relations? Office support? I never thought I'd get a job that wasn't behind a counter." "Well, honey," she said, "you're not behind a counter anymore." He blinked. She wasn't saying it to flatter him. She meant it. And for the first time in weeks, Keon felt his posture straighten on its own. Meanwhile, Crockett was busy behind the scenes. She'd reached out to a friend, Marvin Qualls, director of community affairs at a regional tech firm based in Irving. Qualls had a reputation for giving second chances to young people with rough starts. His firm wasn't Google, but it was solid, paid well, and took pride in mentoring. When Crockett sent Keon's resume over, just a short one-page doc with Regina's help, Marvin didn't hesitate. "Bring him in," he said. "Let's meet the kid." Keon didn't even own a button-up shirt. Regina loaned him one from her son's closet, still starched. The sleeves were a little long, but he kept tugging them up just enough to look like he meant business. He met Marvin that Friday. The office was bright, glass walls and soft carpet. Everything smelled like lemon wipes and printer ink. Keon's hands sweated so much he kept them in his pockets while he waited. Marvin stepped into the room with a coffee and a wide smile. "Keon, right?" "Yes, sir." "You nervous?" Keon nodded. "Good. Means you care." They didn't talk about the McDonald's thing much. Marvin just asked what he wanted to do long term. What kind of work didn't feel like punishment? What time of day he was most focused? What made him proud? Nobody had ever asked Keon those things before. At the end, Marvin said, "We've got a 12-week training track. It's part-time at first. Admin assistant stuff, phones, schedules, sorting chaos. Think you'd be good at that?" "I think I could learn." "That's the right answer." Keon got the spot. He walked out of that office building feeling 10 feet taller, called his mom before he even hit the parking lot. "They hired me," he said. "No kidding?" "No kidding. Start Monday." She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "God's watching, baby. You stay humble." He did. He showed up early, asked questions, took notes, stayed late when asked, learned fast. And even though he wasn't some polished intern with fancy shoes or LinkedIn buzzwords, people noticed. One day, Marvin dropped by his cubicle with a smoothie and said, "You're good at this, Keon. Like, really good. You got instincts." Keon smiled, but kept typing. "Don't let where you started make you think that's where you belong," Marvin added. "You're building your lane now." That night, Keon walked home with a quiet kind of pride in his chest. Not loud, just steady, the kind that sticks. But as he turned the corner onto his block, a neighbor waved him down. "You see the news?" she asked. "No, why?" "McDonald's just released a statement, something about reevaluating internal policy." Keon stared for a moment. "They changed the rules?" he asked. "Looks like it. Your name wasn't mentioned, but it's pretty clear who started all this." But before the headlines faded and attention moved on, something else happened. Something that made Keon realize this story was bigger than just him. The press release from McDonald's headquarters came late on a Tuesday. No names, no admissions. Just corporate speak dressed up as sincerity. "We are currently reviewing our employee conduct policies to ensure they align with the values of respect, community, and fairness." It landed in inboxes and newsrooms nationwide, but everyone already knew what it was about. Keon didn't care much for corporate statements. He'd read it once, then turned his attention back to his work schedule. But the people around him, they cared. That week, a story ran on Dallas Morning News highlighting his journey. They didn't post his full name, but they interviewed Crockett, Marvin, and even Regina. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't overblown. It was just honest. In the article, Crockett said, "Kindness doesn't always make headlines, but when it does, it shouldn't cost someone their future." Then something unexpected happened. An older man walked into the employment center midweek, gray beard, loose-fitting suit, hat tucked under one arm. He asked to speak to Keon. Regina called him over. "You got a visitor?" Keon stepped into the small meeting room, unsure what to expect. The man introduced himself. "Name's Arthur Lansing. I used to run a regional franchise office for McDonald's back in the day. Retired now." Keon raised an eyebrow. "What can I do for you?" Arthur chuckled. "No, young man, it's what I came to say to you." He sat down, hands folded. "I saw what happened. I've worked with that company for over 30 years, and I'll tell you right now, what you did wasn't a fireable offense. It was decency. Old school decency." Keon didn't say anything. Arthur leaned in. "That company taught me a lot, gave me a career, but it also taught me how easy it is to follow the rules so closely that you forget the people behind them." "I wasn't trying to break anything," Keon said. "I just wanted to show respect. And you did, and it mattered." Arthur left a small envelope on the table. "There's a $500 check in there. Not charity, just appreciation. From me." "I can't. Don't argue with an old man, son. Just cash it and keep building." That night, Keon sat on the steps of the center again, staring out at nothing. Life wasn't easy, but it was changing. And not just for him. More stories started surfacing, employees in other cities sharing similar moments of rule breaking that had once cost them jobs. But now, some were being rehired. Others were getting apologies. Quiet ones, sure, but real. One tweet read, "Gave a coffee to a guy who couldn't pay last year. Got written up. Just got a call from my district manager. Policy's been changed." Another, "Used to be scared of doing anything off script at work, but Keon showed me it's okay to have a heart." It wasn't a movement. It wasn't a trend. But it was enough. Back at the tech office, Marvin called Keon into a meeting. "Sit down. I got something for you." Keon sat, nervous again, just like the first day. "We're extending your role. You're now full-time. Benefits included. That all right with you?" Keon's mouth hung open. "For real? You earned it." He went home that night with paperwork in one hand and his mom waiting by the door. She opened it before he knocked. "So?" He grinned. "I'm full-time now." She hugged him tight, tighter than ever before. "Maybe next," she whispered, "you'll be the one writing policy." He laughed. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." But something had shifted. He'd lost a job over $4 and a sandwich, but he'd gained something no paycheck could match. A sense of worth that didn't depend on someone else's rulebook. But before the world moved on, Crockett had one final thing to say, and she wanted Keon to hear it in person. It was a warm Saturday afternoon when Jasmine Crockett pulled up outside the community center. She called ahead, asked Regina if Keon would be around. He wasn't scheduled, but word spread quickly. Within the hour, he was standing outside waiting, trying to look casual and failing miserably. Crockett stepped out of her car, wearing jeans, sneakers, and a shirt that read, "Do good anyway." She gave him a quick nod. "Busy man these days?" "I try," he said, stuffing his hands in his pockets. "Didn't think you'd still be checking in on me." "I said I would," she replied. "Plus I got something to show you." They walked together toward the main building, then past it, toward the back lot where folding chairs had been set up. Maybe 50 of them, all filled. Neighbors, youth workers, local reporters, even a couple folks from the employment center sat facing a makeshift podium. Keon stopped. "Wait, what is this?" Crockett smiled. "This is a community town hall. We hold them once a month, and today we're talking about work, about dignity, about where those two things intersect." Keon looked uncertain. "Don't worry," she said. "You're not speaking. You're just watching." They took seats in the front row. People clapped as Crockett stepped up to the mic. She spoke with that same calm fire Keon had first seen on TV, the kind that didn't shout, but made you feel like you needed to listen. "Too often," she said, We teach our young people to follow rules no matter what. And while discipline matters, context matters more. When kindness becomes a punishable offense, something is broken. And we must ask ourselves, are we raising workers or are we raising citizens? Applause broke out. She continued, this month, one small act reminded us that doing the right thing isn't always popular. It might even cost you. But that doesn't mean it's not worth doing. She turned slightly, eyes landing on Keon for just a beat. That's why we're launching a new local initiative called People Over Policy, a mentorship and advocacy program that uplifts young workers, teaches them their rights, and helps prevent stories like Keon's from repeating themselves. Gasps, applause, cameras flashed. Keon blinked, stunned. I didn't know. We've been building it for a few weeks, Crockett whispered to him. I told you this wasn't about one kid. It's about a system. You just happened to be the one who lit the match. After the town hall, a line of people came up to shake Keon's hand. One woman told him her son had been fired from a retail job last year for letting a kid with no money slide on a candy bar. Another man in construction gear said, you gave a lot of us something to point to when our bosses say, that's just how it is. Keon didn't know what to say to most of them. He just said thank you, over and over. Later that evening, as things quieted down, Crockett walked him back to the curb. You proud of yourself? She asked. He hesitated. I think I'm still catching up. She smiled. That's fair. Just don't fall behind. Thank you, he said quietly, for everything. Don't thank me, she replied. You made the choice. You did the right thing when nobody was looking. That's where it starts. Keon watched her drive off. The folding chairs were being packed away. The sun was dipping low. He looked at the sky, exhaled, and walked back toward the center. The path ahead wasn't clear. He still had to hustle. Still had bills, goals, a long way to go, that's all. But something had shifted, internally, unshakably. He understood now that doing the right thing might not bring comfort, but it brought clarity. And that was something he could build a life on. Because sometimes, one quiet choice in a fast food lobby can echo louder than you ever imagined. If this story moved you, take a moment to think about the rules we follow and the people we affect. Like, share, and subscribe if you believe kindness should never be a liability.